Call with Dads, your podcast for unscripted conversations and honest opinions about what matter to dads. Join the call in this journey called fatherhood. Now here are your hosts to get things started. E.A. Maynard, the man of many words, and some of them could make sense.
Hi, I'm E.A. Maynard.
Along with Mr. Pancakes, who is working to bring back family traditions starting with breakfast.
This is Mr. Pancake, and this is Call with Dads.
Animals, pets, possibly different kind of pets, but I mean, for me, I know, like, I'm guessing we're diving into this, so like for me, we have, I'd say 3 cats here. We've had, I'm thinking 2 hermit crabs and a salamander now that my son collected from a creek, which supposedly salamanders aren't supposed to eat each other, but in a sealed terrarium, we started off with 3 salamanders and now we only have 1, and none of them could have gotten out. So my guess is one got a little hungrier than he should have, and he kind of ate the others. Who knows? But well, like, I know, and kind of what got me thinking is a devil's advocate thing is, I know a while back ago when I worked at a glass company, I was talking with the owner of the company I worked for, and he just had a kid, and my son was still very young at that time. And, you know, I was talking to him about pets and kids, and he was very adamant about not wanting pets around his kid, about how the responsibility, he lists off literally the things I went through and found as like the deterrents that people are against pets for were the things listed off. Like, if you have a young kid or an infant, according to the CDC, it can get germs. Ooh, germs. But those germs could cause illness to severe illness, things like that. And my explanation to him was, are you keeping your kid from going outside because it could be the same thing? But also the extra expense of having a pet versus getting used to having a kid. And then, of course, young kids don't take care of the pets, so that would leave him or the parent to take care of the pets. Right. And of course, what do you do if you have a pet and it dies? And those were the negatives that I found a lot of people talk about online, and he brought up as well. I mean, so I'm going to play both sides of the card on this, because one is, obviously, we have pets.
Right. Yeah.
So with that being said, we're very much pro pets. I believe you mentioned before you have a dog.
Yep. Yeah, we have a French bulldog. It's my absolute favorite.
Yeah, I picked that up on the last time you mentioned about it. So, what is your stance? Let's start off with this. What is your stance about having a pet? Was it your choice? Were you pro it? Were you against it? Where did you stand?
So for me and my kid, I think pets are great, especially for children. I don't see any real solid negatives, honestly. I was doing the same thing as you. I was researching it online. For the most part, it came up with the same thing, the cost, the potential for disease and illness, and so on and so forth. And I mean, if you think about the majority of those illnesses and stuff, I mean, they talk about some illness nobody's ever heard about before. And the chances of you even possibly getting it, I mean, you'd have to you'd have to go to what was that planet that Thanos had the Mind Stone or Time Stone or whatever on, and then you have to give up your firstborn, some stuff, and that's the only way you could ever potentially get that disease. So it was listing that off as a potential negative is just absolute nonsense.
Right.
To me. As far as the cost, I mean, you're an adult. Grow up. You know what I mean? If you can't afford it, don't get it. It's that simple.
Exactly.
That's a fairly simple, task. Fairly simple thought in the idea of getting a pet. It's not like a child where a child sometimes very well children can come upon you against
Right.
your will, due to the act that the majority of us like to do. Uh, an accidental, oops. So pets are not like that. Pets are a full-blown decision, 100%. You make that decision on whether you bring that pet into your family or not. So judging it on the cost and complaining about the cost for people, to me, if you're complaining about that, sorry, you quit
Well,
whining.
I'm gonna jump in there for like
Yeah,
an example. So before we had my son, right? I had a
right.
cat named Gremlin, and
Yeah,
literally my publishing company is named after her. So, but I had Gremlin for 17 years. And
right.
this also kind of goes to the death part because she died while my son was still young. But a
Mm,
17-year-old cat is a very old cat.
yeah.
And so we had, and then before my son was born, when my wife and I got married, we ended up having a roommate that moved out and left all his stuff, including his
Mhm.
cat. So we ended up having two cats
Right,
before we had kids. Now, mind
right.
you, we got used to the expense of feeding, taking care of all this stuff for both
Yeah,
cats. So we had the cats, but some people will be in my situation, my wife's situation, and I, where
yeah,
we had the pets before we even thought about having kids.
right.
So, I mean, there
Yeah.
is that. Like I said, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a bit here because I
And
do understand both
there
sides.
is like there is positions in which you could absolutely account for everything possible on a pet, and then out of nowhere the dog gets like some sort of insane, like, you know
Cancer.
tumor,
Yeah.
or right, or even you just walking the dog and it gets bit by a snake and you have to rush it in, and now it just cost you 3 grand. So there is those times, and I completely understand that. What I mean, like,
Right.
that's like you know, but for the most part, I mean, I've even thought of that stuff. I mean, I've thought of all of the stuff, and then I've thought, in advance, the what ifs, so oops. So to me, it is kind of if you're gonna get a pet, you ought to be able to at least mildly afford it. At least
Right.
hold some responsibility to that. But yeah, there's always going to be some sort of
What ifs?
cost incurrence where you're like, oh, geez, that wasn't intentional. So,
Right.
uh, but the other thing, like, so things like the hassle of it. I mean, that's another one. You kind of know that that's going to be the thing. Some pets, as you know, I have a French bulldog. Um, I went into this French bulldog with some of the hassles of not knowing any of that stuff. So, like French bulldogs, when they go poop, you have to wipe their butt like a person. That was something I had no idea. And no
I
matter
didn't know
what
that.
you do, you cannot have your 6 or 5 or 7 or 8-year-old do that for you. That's your job or your wife's job, one or the other. There's no chance your 5-year-old's gonna wipe the poop off the there, or to even do it correctly. So
Right.
that was definitely a hassle. That was like, no, man, I just got hit with that and had no idea I'm going to be doing this now for the next 17 years.
So you'll always be wiping somebody's butt.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell my wife all the time. I'm like, you know, none of you have wiped my butt, but I have wiped all of yours. And she's like, when have you wiped my butt? And I'm like, do you not remember being in the hospital when you had the C-section with Electra? Do you not, or yeah, do you not remember that? And she's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. I'm like, okay, there you go. Yeah, I've
Uh,
wiped all of your butts. None of you have liked mine.
I would consider that a good thing. Call me funny and all.
Yeah, no, thank you. They can keep that.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. That would be an experience I would not have thought of for a pet.
Right.
I mean, but I'm I'm mostly a cat person, and a lot of that's because I've
Yeah.
lived in apartments most of my life, or most of my adult life. Let me put it that way. Most of my adult life's been in an apartment,
Right.
and it's also cats are. I always like the theory that, and this is just me personally, a dog will love anybody at any time that comes in that door that they know, no matter what. Dogs are all about loving their owners. Cats,
Yeah.
on the other hand, will look at you, walk past you like you owe them money, and then out of nowhere come up to you and demand love when they want it. So
Right.
to me, it's a cat likes you
Yeah.
honestly, not just it's
Not
inbred in
the
them.
not
So
just instincts of dog
yeah,
dad. Yeah.
but it's kind of also when we got the hermit crabs.
Mm.
Originally, those were supposed to be very entertaining, very easy to deal with.
It just sits there.
Not even that. During the day, they're buried under the ground,
Yeah.
and and it's like you sit there, and of course, my son wants to dig them out to look at them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you cannot dig them out. Let's wait till the evenings when they come out. We
Yeah.
can take the flashlight and look at them. And of
Mm.
course, he gets a salamander, which those things do nothing but hide underneath of rocks. So, I mean, which now this thing's underneath its water dish all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I
And
couldn't have those. It would be like Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, like looking through that porthole all the time, like this close, like, hello, come on, crab.
yeah, you know, they're definitely interesting, but if I had to do over again the crabs, I would say, yeah, let's get a lizard that sits on the ground and not.
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah, I mean, I had an iguana when I was a kid.
I hate those things.
And my parents bought me like small animals, a couple small ones. I mean, we had a cat and a dog, but for the most part, my mom did the cat and the dog when we were like in the younger years. And as we got older, we started to learn to progressively take care of animals slowly but surely. But I had like an iguana, and I remember I went through like four of them in like a month because I
Oh,
bought
jeez.
one. Yeah, I bought one and I put it in a cat cage. Um, and you know how the cage of the door has the little, because the cross beams or whatever,
Right.
so the little square opening, so it weaseled itself through there and got stuck and died.
Oh,
So
jeez.
then I had a dead one that week. Then the next one I had in like I didn't put it in that again because I learned that lesson. So I put it in something else, and that one like got out and ran across the floor. Next thing you know, the dog is, you know, chomping it into two. So there was that one. And the next one, I did something else and like dropped it. And then the next one, so basically after four of them, I was like, all right, not that anymore. No more iguanas for
I think
you.
that I think that was a good choice to give
Yeah.
up on that pet. Now,
Over murdering iguanas.
so I mean that's another thing is how old were you when you were doing that?
Probably about 10, I would say.
All right, so at 10 years old, the iguanas died. You probably witnessed two or three of them, it sounds like. I mean, how did you handle the death of the iguanas? Were they hard on you? You only had them
uh,
for a short time. Did you think about
yeah,
it?
for the most part, for one, it was a very short period of time of owning the animal. For two, iguanas are the type of animal or pet that doesn't really have a lot of emotion connected to it. no
Right.
facial expressions or noise making or anything. They don't do anything. They just sit there and stare. So there really wasn't. It was kind of just like a, oh well, that sucks, or I probably got upset or whatever, got mad or cried or whatever I did. But I remember it didn't really affect me that much. It wasn't that big of a deal, you know.
All right. So, and you said you had cats and dogs growing up too.
Yeah.
So how old were you when one of those passed away? Because for me, I was 16
Yeah.
when my first pet, which was a dog, passed
Right.
away, and I was very close to him. He
Yeah.
ended up getting sick and had to be put down.
Right.
And
Um.
yeah, so how old
Yeah.
were you? Because to me, it was hard at 16,
Right.
but
So
I dealt with it.
my first time ever like really having to deal with that, I think I was like 15 or 16 as well, so about the same age. So we had this dog. My mom named it Ivory because it was like white, like big white fluffy fur, and it was like a Samoyed mixed with a golden retriever. So it looked like a golden retriever with like a wolf kind of face, but it was all white and didn't have the gold to it. And I mean, my parents got her when I was like one. My brother was probably like 3 or 4 at the time, and I was like 1.5 change range. So I mean, essentially, I grew up with the dog, all the way up until I
Hmm.
was like 16. Um, the dog was getting old. It was starting to. It got like a tumor in the back of its head, and we think that it was kind of like passed out and too old to get up. You know, um, my back then, my mom had an F-250 with a 7.3 diesel in it. So when you started it, it was like rah rah rah. It was real loud, obnoxiously loud, big old school diesel. Um,
Right.
the ones with the big valve clacks that when it runs. So this dog used to sleep under it all the time. So my mom would go out there, start the truck every single day, and then go back inside, finish up whatever, collect the kids, and then get the kid in there. Um, that way the dog had gotten up and would get out, because you hear the noise is obnoxious. But he used to sleep under the trucks because it was South Florida, so it was hot,
Right.
so shade underneath. Um, so just one day that didn't happen.
Well,
Yeah.
so,
All I remember is my mom pulling forward, and I just dump dump, and we were like, "What was that?" And we all go to look to see if there was going to be a basketball, slinging out from underneath. Sure enough, nothing. So my mom got out, and she was like, "Crap, let's just go to school." I was like, "What?" Yeah, she's like, yeah, just go. We're just going to school. And she told me later that she had smushed the dog. I was like, oh god. Well, yeah,
now,
I was pretty
here's kind of my
devastated. I would say I would definitely cried.
yeah. Well, and here's kind of my thought about that too. Because, like I said, I did a lot more research because one, with being big pet people here at my house, and
Right.
I grew up with, I've had a pet almost my entire life, with an exception of a couple years here and there. The one thing that people, like I said, people mention death being, what do you do? Now, of course, most times, unless something odd happens, disease, car, mom's pickup truck, whatever it might be. I mean, most times you're in your teens where you're old enough to actually understand but the pet passing. Most times, most kids have, like right now, it's very unlikely my 5-year-old is going to have to deal with the cat that's not even a year old passing, or the twins that are, I think, 4 years old, so they're a year
Yeah.
younger than him.
Right.
So generally, when a pet passes, they're in their teens or things like that,
Mhm.
and you can explain to them, hey, they're at the age that you can explain to them, this is what happened, and you can explain your religious beliefs, or say it went to a farm, or however you want to do it, but they're at that age they can understand what you're telling them.
Right.
So But one of the big things I also saw, and this kind of to me plays into it, is it gives better having pets helps with building emotional intelligence, I think it's called,
Yeah.
kind of being able to understand and feel. And like, and I hate to say this, I'm an older dad. I'm 44 years old. So, but most parents or most kids, their grandparents will be the first thing that they find as death.
Right.
And
For the most part,
most times it's in teenage years as well. Because
yeah.
a lot of people, when they have kids, the kids are what, or the parents are usually what, in their early to mid 20s, at
Yeah.
least I
Early
grew up.
20s, early 30s, mid 20s, late 20s. Yeah. I would say 20, from 20 to 30 is like, I would say the more common age.
Right.
I was 34 when she was born. Yeah.
I was
34.
39. So
Yeah.
I was I was on the 40s doorstep by the time my son was born.
I just
No,
turned 30.
30, 38 maybe. I was 39
Yeah.
or 38, something like that.
Right.
I'd have to do the math. Sadly enough, I still have to pull out a calculator to remember how old I am at times.
Yeah.
So, but the general purpose of that is one, for a kid to be able to have that emotional support and connection to something that's not directly their mom and dad or brother and
Right.
sister is
Yeah.
completely different. Plus, you kind of like I can see in my daughter who's not two yet, but getting close to it, how she's constantly hugging and kissing the pets.
Mhm.
Where my son wants to roughhouse and fight and occasionally wants to lay there and hold their paws when
Yeah.
he's tired and things like that. And the cats will play with him, they'll run from him, all this stuff.
Mhm.
But they'll also, I have one cat that'll sit there and just, when he's tired, and he'll just lay down and hold the paws of the cat, and the cat
Right.
will lay there like, okay, I'm fine with this.
Oh my
That kind of connection they
Yeah.
don't get with friends outside of the house.
Right. I
And
would say so. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't learn the compassion because when you have friends outside of the house, at least in my opinion, it's
Right.
more you're acting a certain way
Hmm.
where your pet, even at any age of a kid, you don't worry about are they going to make fun of me? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? It's as long as they don't scratch them, then they know that their pet's going to love them, going to be there for them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And I find that to be a huge important factor because that emotional development,
Hmm.
it's hugely important because it's also a big factor. And from what I've read, kids with autism, or I actually wrote it down so I could say it properly, ADA, ADD, or ADHD.
Yeah.
So kids with those, even adults with those issues, pets
Yeah.
bring in that emotional support, that emotional comfort. And,
Right.
yeah, there's an expense, there's the fear of death, but, sadly enough, my mom was talking to me about life insurance today, and she's telling me, hey, I have life insurance on my kids, and there was life insurance on me when I was a kid.
Right.
You don't expect to actually have to use it. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things that death can happen for any reason, any time to any living creature.
Right.
So,
I
I
use
mean,
I use life insurance as like a bank loan.
as a bank loan,
Yeah. You
well,
buy a life insurance policy, uh, pay on it for about a year, and then pull out the death benefit, and then by the time it gets to the end, you continue to pay on it forever. By the time it gets to the end, the your payment will have rebuilt that death benefit. So you just got that. Like, say you pulled out $100,000 one. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like $20 a month. You pull out $100,000 one, you pay your 20 or a whole life insurance like $100, but you pull the $100,000 out after 6 months. Maybe you got to buy a new vehicle or whatever. You buy the new vehicle, whatever. You keep the leftover change, whatever, and then you continue to pay your $100 a month for the next 20 years. By the end of the 20 years, that $100,000 death benefit it's back, because the banks invest your $100 in stocks and all that stuff, so it builds and it comes back. So it's not like they'll tell you, oh, you'll lose that 100,000. It's a lie. You'll get it back. So I use that.
Well, with that, I'll tell you what. I will.
No financial information given here. It's just my fun.
I was going to say, from what I've seen, that at least with my policy, that's not how it works. So
right. There's several different types of policies. You have to know your best, something like that. Yeah, I talk to somebody about it. I don't just go do whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, off topic. Sorry. Anyway.
yeah, I'll tell you what. But it's a great topic. Eventually, what we'll do is, I have a financial advisor I'll reach out to, see if he can get on and talk about life insurance and things to plan for. So that would be, we'll get into that another time.
For sure.
But right now, pets. So what benefits do you tend to see with your daughter having a pet around, even though you have to be the one that's going to probably wipe its butt till the end of time?
And clean up pee and
because call me funny, once your daughter's old enough to do it, I doubt she's going to.
Yeah, that's it. And they'll be like, you do it. I don't want to, Dad.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say the biggest one is emotional benefit. You know what I mean? She's too young to learn responsibility in that aspect just yet. She's not too young to learn responsibility. She's just too young to learn responsibility in that aspect. You know what I mean? She will come and help and feed and stuff like that, but that's what we do. We just let her help or do certain things, feed a dog or whatever, okay, Daddy, stuff like that. But she can't ever be expected to be responsible for it on a daily basis just yet. But so at her age, the dog is a good, I would say, emotional support and companion, and she learns things from the dog. We actually, one of the things, like we were talking about how the dog, dealing with the death of an animal. We got this French bulldog about a year ago, let's say. Because our other dog actually died from cancer. She was about a 50-pound full-size dog. She was black-mouthed cur, so she was like kind of a sheepdog or a shepherd dog kind of deal. About 50 pounds, strong as an ox, very, very loving, extremely emotional dog. Like there's some dogs that are just like, roar, 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 roar. You put food in front of their face and and they eat it, right? This dog was extremely emotional, had a high level intelligence. So it wasn't just quite, here's a food, hump this, it wasn't quite that idea. So my daughter, as well as myself and my wife, all got extremely attached to her. As well as when we got her, I had just gotten back from a pretty serious like overseas deployment, where I had quite the rough time. And our dog, her name was Nebula. She actually kind of knew a lot of the stuff I was going through and connected with me. And she actually helped me deal with a lot of that PTSD and pain and stuff like that. She would sleep with me all the time. She would sleep on my chest and stuff like that all the time. So she would help me get through that. And that was honestly looking to an animal for that type of love and support is almost something you learn as a child by
Hmm.
having animals. You know what I mean? It's a feeling that unless you really don't get that experience as a child, you're not going to be able to deal with it or do it as an adult. So her having that dog, and when I would say, I thought that based on my connection with the dog, I was going to be the one that was the most hurt and in the most pain. I mean, I cried for probably 3 days straight. You know what I mean? I was so detrimentally destroyed from it. Because I mean, it also came out of nowhere. She was perfectly healthy, and then one day she wasn't, and the next day she was dead. So it was like out of nowhere. I thought I was going to deal with the pain the worst, and my daughter is actually to this day, over a year later, still dealing with it. She still every so often will catch a memory and just start crying, and we're over a year later. You know what I mean? So it just shows that kids and children really do get that serious connection and feeling, even though it's just an animal. It's still a companion. It's family. Today, we originally got the French bulldog because she was having such a hard time, and we figured it would kind of shift her memory or mind temporarily, pull her mind off of this, put it on this, and
Hmm.
it did help at the time. It was pretty good. It helped out, but it didn't remove the pain or remove the crying and upset feeling and stuff like that. It just shifted it temporarily. um, so now today she has that. We named her Gamora. I watch Marvel a lot. I'm a nerd. So you get Nebula and Gamora. And
Right.
we thought that to be fitting, because it's almost like a sister scenario situation. We pretend and talk to Alexa, or sorry, my daughter. You got to blur out her name.
Not a
uh,
problem.
um, we talked to my daughter about it, and we pretend that those two are sisters. Nebula and Gamora are sisters. So now she has almost connected Gamora, our dog, as her sister, and almost regards her as her sister. She will kind of react to her similar to like she's her sister. Like Gamora will come up, when or my daughter will be sitting on the couch, eating like crackers or whatever, and Gamora will come up and go to like lick her or something, or just lean up against her, and my daughter will be like, "Gamora, stop, get off of me," and she'll like shove her away. Um, she's gotten mad at her, and she's hit her, learning to hit and not to hit and stuff like that. And she's gotten
Hmm.
mad at her and like hit the dog. We had to like teach her about no hitting, and
Right.
so
Which
she, yeah. So she acts and talks to her like she talks to us, like people. What I mean? She regards her as her sister. So she'll read her books. She'll go up in her bed and she'll say, "Gamora, come here," and she'll set her next to her, and she'll grab the book and she'll read the dog the book and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting.
all right.
So,
I know. Again, it's a bit of a different scenario with us having cats versus dogs, but like my son was very attached to the cat that we ended up getting thrown on us without when that roommate moved out, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
he was highly attached to her. She slept in his crib with him,
Mm,
loved him, just very close. And
right.
kind of when she passed probably, oh, I'd say a year, maybe a year ago, about that time, or not even a year ago.
Right.
So less than a year ago at this point. And here's, here's kind of my other thought is since we already had cats in the house, when one pet passed, it wasn't too emotionally upsetting
Right.
because he still had some emotional support from the other cats.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we agreed that we'll always have two cats at minimum. But even to this day, he'll sit there and like my wife, she'll mix up names of the animals, and she'll go, well, Boots and Lin and KK, and my son will go, Mommy, KK's no longer here.
Yeah.
And he goes, so, and he understands because we've explained it to him that, hey, she passed away.
Right.
And we explained our belief system and all this. And we said, this is where she is. And, our goal is to get back to be able to be with those that we love. And if all is how it should be, we'll hopefully see her there, and et cetera, et cetera. But, and, my son, I believe his emotional state, it built it up a little bit more, because when my cat Gremlin passed, he was very young. I don't think he even realized.
Right. Yeah.
Like, he remembers her in pictures, but that was about the gist of it.
Right. Too young to understand or deal with it or feel.
Yeah. Now, another thing that I found in my research, and I've always said this, but I've never had all the data to back it up until I actually did the dive into it, was the kids that have pets tend to show to be healthier. So they tend to be, their immune systems develop stronger. They, opposed to the CDC saying don't get pets because they might get sick.
Right.
All other research shows that kids with pets will end up being healthier. So
you saw how the CDC was wrong on a lot of stuff recently.
Yeah. Speaking of pets, so ended up having one join us.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense that kids would, their immune systems would be slightly stronger or built up from being around that stuff. Because I mean, you got to think about, they're exposed to germs that normally you wouldn't be. I mean, you're not gonna go out in the yard and eat a rat or lick a piece of poop and then come inside and lick your owner's face or lick your daughter's face. You know what I mean? So, that's something that they're exposed to that they normally wouldn't be exposed to. Not that stuff's bad or anything. I mean, nobody. If you mentally see the rat and lick it yourself, you're gonna puke. But if the dog goes out, licks the rat, or the cat goes and licks the rat, comes inside, licks you on your face, you don't even know what happened. You're exposed to those same antibodies and germs, and you don't even know what happened. So, and it's only a little bit at a time, so it's probably good for them, like you said.
An example, even for adults, you look at, like, one thing you notice a lot with people that are retired, and I was thinking about this recently because my mom retired, and she swears when we were there for Thanksgiving that my daughter got her sick again.
Right.
And I thought about it, and the fact is when you're out there working, normally you're working in an office, unless you're somebody like me who works from home. As you can see behind me, I have my work computer behind me and all sorts of stuff. And it's just that whole, most people, you're around a lot of people.
You're exposed to all of these things.
And if you go to church, temple, community groups, whatever you're going to, that exposes you to other germs, viruses, things like that. But as you either become more a work from home person, retired, where you're not around people a whole lot, without that interaction, you end up getting sick easier. And kids, they tend to be a petri dish with legs. So anybody that doesn't realize getting into fatherhood that you're going to end up sitting there going, why am I always sick?
Yeah.
Until I got a kid, I would literally never be sick. I think before my son was born, I counted in one hand how many times I was actually sick, and not including hangovers. I quit counting after the first year.
Right. Yeah. It's like, man, I work from home. Why am I throat hurt. I didn't even go out today. I haven't been out of my house in 3 days because there's no point. There's nowhere to go. I've got nothing to do. Everything's taken care of. I got all the food and water, everything I ever need. My family's here. Why am I sick all the time? Oh, my kid. Right.
Exactly. So, I
My
mean,
kid was eating dirt. That's right.
there's all sorts of reasons that,
The neighbor's
mean-
kid snotted on my kid. Perfect. That's right.
so I mean, I think the big view on my point is you hear all these negatives. Now, there's obviously, you and I seem to have the same viewpoint because we both grew up with pets.
Yeah.
My wife, from what she's told me, she didn't grow up with pets.
Mhm.
And she grew up in China, so every now and then she would mention a dog, and I'll, of course, make the bad joke of, did it become dinner?
Don't eat it.
I'm like, what happened to it? Did it become dinner? And she never, I don't think she's ever answered me on that.
Yeah.
But it's also different cultures have different views about pets.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know, like, some cultures, pets are considered dirty. It's against the religion to have them in the house. I think I've heard different things like that. And so our viewpoint, obviously, my wife, she loves fish, and she would grow up and have fish and this and that. So for
Right.
her, fish as a pet is a good pet. She likes them. Me, I grew up with a dog and a cat because we lived out in the country for a while, and so I think dogs are good pets as long as they're nowhere near my yard. So,
Yeah.
but
I had a couple of dogs, a couple of cats. They had 2 horses, and then we had another empty barn that my parents would rent out to another horse, that somebody would keep their horse there. And obviously we had an array of hamsters and gerbils and lizards and
I think
stuff like
every kid eventually, or most kids eventually, have gerbils.
Yeah.
I'm
tarantulas.
expecting my kid to have reptiles, amphibians. My
Yeah.
daughter, I'm expecting her to probably end up with gerbils or bunnies, or
Right.
if I'm lucky, she just leaves them alone and we stick with the cats.
Yeah. We had ferrets, and we had ferrets stink, and we had a
Yeah.
couple of bunnies, and we had bunnies out, and we kept them out in like a chicken wire cage out in the outside with like a roof and stuff. And out where we lived, a fox got them.
Yeah.
So it's like, well,
I guess
whatever.
I should use that excuse next time my wife talks about us having chickens again. Honey,
Yeah.
we have a fox running around. It's just going to look at it as dinner here.
Gonna eat it.
Yes. But I mean, overall, I think if you grow up with pets, it's almost a no-brainer. You're going to accept them. People that didn't grow up with pets, strictly my opinion as it is, and there's a whole lot of benefits to do it.
Right.
But you also have to be ready to, you either have to decide what age you're going to take that step to have the pet. So usually, in my opinion, if you have a kid and you're not used to having a pet, I would personally suggest that you wait a couple years, maybe 5 or 6 years, to where you can explain things to your kid and they can understand it. Because my almost 2-year-old daughter, still, I have to do not lay on the cats. You weigh more than they do.
Don't pull its ears.
Yeah. But she still bends down and hugs it and kisses it.
Right.
But it's also the fact of, since we already have them, we're already teaching her. And we also have that experience. My wife, she's familiar enough with pets and she's attached to them enough that she understands, hey, we need to do this with the cats. We need to
Right.
act this way. So that whole process is second nature to her as well at this point. If
Right.
if you're just stepping into having pets for the first time and it's your first rodeo with pets and you have a kid, at least wait till they're old enough to understand and even try to start them off with something little like a hamster, a guinea pig, something like that.
Right. Yeah. Something small that they can't get super attached to, I would think would be the
Right.
best.
I
Yeah.
would say something furry that they can pick up unless they have like
A
some
dog or a cat's a little too, I think, because they have emotions,
right.
they connect with you. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think it's good for me. I mean, beyond responsibility, beyond like doing all those things and learning how to take care of. I mean, it's just you can almost in a weird way almost see the level of love that an adult gives. You have two adults. This adult never had a pet growing up, and this adult had pets growing up. This adult doesn't have pets as an adult. This adult does have pets. But the difference in the level of love, you know what I mean? When you have towards your family as an adult, it just somebody with kids over the years, it's almost like they learned to just love differently or more almost. You know what I mean? So like I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. Like there's a difference between a, a guy that goes to give his kid a hug and he's just like, yep, all right, see you later. And a dad that goes and gives a kid a big old hug, kiss on the head, hey buddy, all right, hey, have a good day at school, bud, all right. Those are two different people.
Right.
My stepdad was a see ya, you know,
Right.
but his dad was exactly the same. He was old school World War II veteran. Fought and fought in whatever over in Germany or whatever. So he was very no animals, no pets, no nothing. He was very stern, very mean. And my stepdad was not as bad, but similar. Very stern, very plain, very simple. Not a lot of love, not a lot of feeling. Very just. But he didn't have any children grown or any animals growing up. I did. My parents, him and my mom, gave me. So me now when I go to see my daughter, I'm like to the point where she's like, "Get off me, Dad! Stop!" I'm over there like, fucking
Right.
kid to death. So I just feel like that little bit of extra is enough to push you over the edge into a position as an adult to where you love more. I don't know. You can feel more.
You know,
Weird way.
let me put my thought on that
Yeah.
because like my grandpa, he was kind of that old school hard nosed kind of thing.
Right.
But on the same note, I think more for him was for him showing emotion was not something he grew up being taught.
Right.
So he might very well had strong emotions, cared very much, whatever it might be, but
Mhm.
in his generation and in his life, because he did kind of he had a dog and he grew up on farms and all this, so he was around animals his whole life. So I think part of that plays in on generational, how you were raised and what so have you.
Right.
But I
For
think
sure.
having a pet that you're close to, and I think it also plays more into with our generation and the generations following us, and maybe the generation right before us, possibly, but the emotional being able to show your emotions isn't deemed as a weakness kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So those people, and I do agree, people with a pet will show emotions a lot differently than
Mhm.
people without pets
Right.
because you can see somebody that has like the cats, I have two cats that'll fight who's going to lay on my chest when I go to sleep at night. You know,
Yeah.
one cat likes to sleep in the rocking chair in my daughter's room, and my daughter definitely loving to animals. So is my son. And as they get older, my son's very much open to showing that he's caring, but he also likes to be a boy and fight and wrestle. So it's not he's becoming a sissy boy, but he's being able to still show that, hey, I do care, I do have these emotions, and that's what pets do bring out. Where I think if you don't have that compassion, that companionship, that what was it called, emotional intelligence,
Right, emotional intelligence. Yeah.
I think it leads a whole different life. And I mean,
it's
of course,
obvious it's not 100% of cases,
right?
But
Every kid's going to be their own person. So,
the majority.
but I mean, you could very well. I mean, in all truth, I was kind of a hard nose in my early 30s, late 20s, and even kind of a bully in my later years of high school. And I had pets, and I was very attached to them, loved them to death. I mean, I knew I could count on just being able to go home and have them there and not worry. But so, I mean, but it's also one thing that people did say is they, like a lot of my exes that I dated, would see my cat and how I treated her and say that any girl I married would obviously be treated amazing if I treated them half as well as I treated my cat. And the fact of, if I love my cat this much, how much would I love my kids?
Yeah.
So I think pet ownership does kind of prep you for taking that step to have a strong family, to be able to do things like that and teach kids so much more.
Yeah.
It's, in my opinion, it's definitely well worth, if you're thinking about having a kid, get a pet. So you can try and look at, like, cats are fantastic, but you do have to watch some cats that like to crawl into bed with the babies at night. But that's only the first year that you worry about that, and after that, it's really not a concern.
I'd say it's well worth it comparative to the potential disease that you're going to get on some planet far, far away in the other universe. I actually want to look at. I mean, I'm going to look up one of these diseases really quickly. Let's see what the name is.
All right. So while you're looking that up, one thing, like my list here that I have, it talks about also one thing that we didn't mention is how having these pets will allow the kids to be able to get more exercise, more running, even if it's an indoor cat. Like I said, my son chases after the cats and are constantly trying to play that way. Yeah. So obviously it looks like you found that disease. So can you even pronounce the name?
Let's see. Yersinia enterocolitica. That's one of them.
So before we go to any others, I wouldn't even be able to repeat that. What does that disease consist of? I mean,
let's see. What is that? What is Yersinia
because of something or other?
Yeah, Yersinia is a gram-negative rod-shaped bacterium belonging to the family Yersinia, whatever, causes or symptoms. Here we are. Common symptoms in children are fever, abdominal pain, and diarrhea, which is often bloody. Symptoms typically develop 4 to 7 days after exposure and may last 1 to 3 weeks. So it's essentially a really crappy cold.
Yeah, I mean, I know that those symptoms.
You ever heard of anybody ever getting that ever?
No, but I know those symptoms there, from what the pediatricians I've dealt with have said is those are common with probably a ton of other things as well. So
Right. Pretty much everything. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
basically some antibodies
yeah,
fixes that.
probably something they need anyways.
Yeah.
Bordetella bronchoseptica. So in my experience, Bordetella is a commonly vaccinated thing that dogs commonly get vaccinated for. And it's essentially just, it causes inflammation of the trachea and bronchi. So it's just a bad cough. It's canine cough. It's just a cough. And apparently they can give it to kids, but I remember my other dog, this dog, they're vaccinated on it like 3 times a year. So it's the chances are like, give me a break. You know what I mean? Let's see, what's another one? Methicillin resistance staphylococcus aureus. That's a 4-word one.
So basically, if you have a pet and you give them their vaccinations, you take care of them, and you don't live in a third world country, then the likelihood to get any of these diseases, illnesses that the CDC is trying to warn people about is hugely slim from what it sounds like because...
Right, yeah. That one is MRSA. Methicillin resistant staphylococcus aureus. MRSA. That's the nickname for it. MRSA is, or staph infection essentially. It's I mean, I've had staph infection. I've never had MRSA. I never had MRSA that caused staph infection. I got staph infection from getting stabbed when I was overseas.
What a wonderful story there.
Wait a second. So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, my dog licks my face all the time. Has for years, even when I was a kid. Never, not once, got MRSA or staph infection. Not once. My dog eats poop.
Look at this too. Like my son, I think we even talked about his nature class that he led himself for the salamander hunt a while back. The fact of, like I mentioned, he has a salamander right now that I want him to get rid of so we can get a lizard, at least a lizard that's above ground that can be seen.
Right.
But salamanders, and I didn't know this, and when I was growing up, we would go camping in Pennsylvania and I would pick up salamanders, and you never think about it. A salamander is just a salamander.
Right.
Well, they produce some kind of slime on their body that has salmonella in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, but in other words, don't pick up a salamander and lick your hands.
Right.
And if you see your kid with a salamander, throw some of that hand sanitizer on their hands and away you go.
Right.
Because, and the likelihood is if they don't have it as a pet and it's in your area, if they're walking around and they can find something to pick it up, the likelihood is what they're going to find outside of pets, the pets that you have at home, is going to be something more to worry about than the pets that you have inside your house.
Inside your home, right? Correct.
Because at least lizards in your house, you can say, okay, you played with it, let's go wash your hands.
Yeah. I can only imagine more or less the chances of you even getting salmonella from a salamander in the wild that actually has salmonella on its back or whatever is like, I mean, you could probably eat the stinking thing raw and still not get it. I mean, is it possible? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it probably has salmonella on it. But it's like my wife, I didn't really know a lot of this stuff when I was younger, in my younger years. I did the typical the typical, oh, I want my kid to get sick or I need to get sick so I get the antibodies, and that's okay to an extent. But in reality, just simply being exposed, even so, like on a cold, when somebody gets the the viral, they call it a viral load. So say they were in numbers, you know what I mean? Say you get one viral or virus dot versus somebody comes with the active common cold and sneezes and spits in your mouth, you're probably going to get a million little viral dots in your mouth, whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
The difference is zero. So the only difference is that one, your body is going to develop that antibody, understand it, and from that point forward, you're going to now know how to develop the antibody. Versus the 1 million, your body's going to still develop the antibody. Your body's going to know how to develop and deal with that antibody in the future, just like getting one. But the million's going to make you get a cough. So,
Right.
I mean, getting a salamander and having that little bit touch your tongue,
Yeah.
it ain't going to hurt you.
Plus,
You
the
know?
likelihood is if they touch a salamander, they're going to put it down. They're going to grab something else. They're going to wipe their hands on dirt.
Right.
I mean,
Right. You
so
wipe your hands on 300 things. So,
yeah, but generally, there's more things in the wild to worry about than in your own house when you have pets.
correct.
Now,
Yeah.
now the other side of that coin is, and I'm saying this because I think it makes sense, is don't go out and get a pit bull that you rescue from a fighting ring.
Right.
I
You
mean,
expect it to be calm.
yeah. I mean, there are certain breeds of dogs and animals that you just don't get for kids. So also do your research, obviously, because because who knows, you might get a dog that you have to wipe their butt for 17 years.
And clean up its pee.
Yeah, so do your research so you don't end up like Mr. Pancake.
Oh,
Or
I think that my wife did her research. I think that she knew. I think she just did it on purpose because, oh, it's too cold. I don't want to go outside. Can you do it? Oh, not, and then when it's not too cold, oh, it's too hot outside. Can you do it?
I was going to say, you're in Florida. Cold doesn't really exist, does it? Don't
Yeah,
get
it was 38 last night and 42, or not. It was 42 last night and 38 last night, the night prior. So it
so
got pretty cold.
what is your daytime temperature, so?
Oh shit!
Because
Shoot, I haven't
here's
been outside in 5 hours.
so
No,
I was going to
7
say,
hours.
because now the part of Florida you're in, I haven't really spent too much time in that
58.
area. 58 today? So
I'm
you're
in
about
North Florida, like Panhandle. So
right. So you're about 10 degrees warmer than we are. So do you guys even get snow there?
no,
Yeah.
neither.
So
No,
like
God forbid it did snow. The ocean's like walking distance from my house. It wouldn't last on the ground for more than a split second.
oh no, the salt air would just demolish it.
Right.
So and just like for us, we don't really here in Virginia, we get because I'm right outside of DC, so we get freezing rain more than we get snow.
Right.
But for me, I have a rain jacket with a wool liner that I'll wear as a winter coat for most of winter.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing. But yeah, it's definitely do your research before getting a pet.
For sure.
And
Absolutely.
fathers, don't let your wife choose the pet because the likelihood is any negative of that pet will be your responsibility. But also make sure there are breeds that are great for home protection, that are great for
Yeah.
loving this and that, but those same breeds are horrible around kids because they're jealous.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like my blackmouth cur was when it came to that was the one that died of cancer.
okay,
Um, when it came to like love and affection and protection, it It loved every human on Earth unless they had a problem with me, my wife, and my daughter. Then it was like time to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And but either way, she still was very lovey and affectionate. You know what I mean? She didn't hurt or attack anybody. She was very friendly, very loving to other dogs, wonderful with my daughter and other kids and other stuff like that. She was just kind of a brat. So they're hard up to teach. You know what I mean? Like sit or hold
Right.
still.
Well,
They're-
even, and not just dogs. I had my first my first or second apartment that I lived in. I
mhm.
forget because they were both in the same building. I just moved across the hall to the bigger apartment. But I had two ferrets, and like you said,
Oh, that's
yes, they
fun.
can. Yeah,
So, see?
but and you would think, okay, small animals, they can be loving, all this.
Right.
Now, I had a roommate, which ironically was named Eric. So, and he had three friends named Eric. So, Matt, this was back in the day of landlines and things like that. So, imagine phone calls. Hey, Eric, is Eric there? Sure, Eric, who is this? Oh, this is Eric. Eric's on the phone.
Yeah,
So,
which
yeah. But getting back to the actual point with the ferrets, is they were very loving. They let him pet them.
Mm,
All this when I wasn't there or when I was asleep, but they would sleep on my bed when I was asleep, and he worked second or third shift. He would swing between the two, and he would come in to see if, like, just pop his head in to see if I was in my room or if I was out with somebody or something. And he would tell me all the time that if I was sleeping, that they would run to the end of my bed and hiss at him and make noises. And he said that in the dim light of my room, he could see them showing their teeth. Now, ferrets are small, but their teeth are long enough to go through your fingers, and
yeah,
their claws can cut you pretty nicely.
yeah. The little
So,
baby, the ones that,
yeah. So definitely not a pet I would suggest for an infant.
right.
But with that said, it's the whole thing of, we, as dads, as parents, we need to know what we're bringing into the house. And if you already have pets in the house, you also need to make sure that you teach your kids. Like I said, we had cats when my son was born. So
Yeah,
we had to teach them how to interact with the cats and then just repeat the process with my daughter. And
right.
one thing I have learned is there is a huge difference of how boys and girls interact with pets as little kids.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I would say as especially I mean I don't have any I mean I guess our situation was like this scenario, but it ended up good for us. Um, but as a new parent, if you have an established dog or pet, especially like a dog, because dogs are bigger and stronger,
right,
cats are the next one down.
right,
But if you have like let's say you have an established dog in the house, um, and you're a young family couple and you have your first kid, um, and now that dog is no longer the baby is now the baby, and if that, I would just say you need to be prepared to find that dog a new home. Not necessarily that you'll have to, but you need to prepare yourself that that is a potential option. Because if that dog bites that baby, the outcome is worse for it than if you just see
rehome
the
it.
dismiss, yeah, than just simply rehoming the dog prior to a bite. Recognizing that a potential bite is there, and going, I guess we need to rehome it because putting the dog down or putting it at the pound or anything like that is just bad for the dog. That's
Right.
that's not okay. The
And
dog didn't do anything wrong. It did what its instincts told it to. So finding, being prepared for that will give you, I would say, the ammo to, really look at it and reasonably, tell how the animal is going to act and react towards the new baby in the home, and give
and
you the option and ability to just simply rehome the dog.
yeah, and part of that is doing your research with the
Right.
breed that you have, and
Yeah.
if it and look, even if it's a breed that's good with kids, look at ways to make sure that, like, how to custom the dog with the new baby so
Yeah.
that it doesn't feel it. But let's do this. We're either close to an hour or about over an hour now.
Yeah.
So right now you have Pancakes with Your Dad up and running, .com. You have the website up.
Yep.
I'm working on some stuff that I'm not ready to announce, but it's going to be coming. But
Yeah.
I think will be, if I can manage it, will be good for dads as well, especially dads in my position. With Call with Dads, we're on any audio service that you can find, and if we're not, shoot us a message, because I can guarantee you I'll find a way to get it on there most times, unless it's a paid service that wants an ungodly amount of money to be on there. And YouTube, we have our YouTube video. Obviously, you can see my face and Mr. Pancake, since he's in witness protection or hiding, or he's not even telling me what his case is there, but you can kind of see his little silhouette behind the little distorted camera view of him. But generally, yeah, you can find us about anywhere you want. We're on social media, Truth, Twitter, Facebook. I don't think we deal with Instagram.
Yeah, I have a Facebook, but I don't have an Instagram attached to it. I was thinking maybe, but I don't know. It's not really super like active.
Right. So in general, those are the main places you can find us. Obviously, our website, callwithdads.com. You can reach us there. We have links to all of our social there. And you can find the YouTube there. We're on Substack, which I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that going or just get rid of it. But as of this recording, we on episode 8. So out of the first 8 episodes, it's on there. But yeah, generally, we're about wherever we can be found. That makes sense to us.
Yeah.
You can reach out to us. And Pancake with Your Dad you're about everywhere too, aren't you?
Yeah. The Pancakes with Your Dad page is on Truth Social. But you can't message me on there unless you friend request me first, in which case I'll friend request you back. It's just, Facebook is on there as well as Instagram, and you can send me messages on Facebook. That's more than likely your best bet for just a simple message or question. And then I have a Twitter as well. You can message me on Twitter. And then I have a LinkedIn, and you can message me on LinkedIn as well. But there's also the Pancakes with Your Dad page, our website, which is pancakeswithyourdad.com. That has all the links on there, all the socials on there, email, as well as any sort of messaging centers where you can just reach out to me and ask me any kind of question you need. If you have cool recipes, please send them my way and share. I'm always about sharing cool recipes and stuff like that. We can maybe make some cool pancakes, or even split it up a little bit and do some waffles. But yeah, I like bacon a lot, so it's delicious. But yeah, we'll just shoot us a message and we'll go from there. We'll do something interesting.
Which sounds good. And then we're also working on guests. We set up our first guest to come on.
Oh
So
yeah.
what I'll be posting more about that as we get closer to it, to the air date of his coming on. But he's done pretty well with helping the fatherhood community. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
with
me too.
that, reach out to us.
I think
Let us
that'd be
know.
great.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll reach out to my financial advisor. Maybe we can get some information on what to do for 501s, something for college funds, and how to
Yeah.
plan for your kids' financial realm, because
Hmm.
things like that, with that area, I design restaurants, I write, I
Right.
design websites. I'm not a financial guy by any means, so
Me neither.
yeah, so definitely don't take our financial advice other than the grain of salt that, or the 2 cents that it's
Yeah.
worth. You know what I mean? The grain of
Those are
salt,
the
two
certain things
cents,
that
whatever you want to say.
I
So
do.
yeah, generally that's about it. Is we're expanding, we're doing good. Our audience is looking good. It seems like we have good people getting into listen. Well, I hope you are all good people. You might be bad people cursing us out, and if you are, keep downloading the episodes. I'm okay with that. But yeah,
Maybe we'll make
that
you a good
is what
person.
it is. With that being said, I think we just say goodbye to everyone, and the next
Yeah.
episode we'll dig into more things for people to enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah. See you next episode.
See you next episode.